History remembers Rome as an unstoppable force, an empire of iron, order, and glory. But once, just once, that empire trembled. It wasn't because of a rival king or a foreign invader. It was because of one man, a man they called Spartacus. He wasn't born a king. He wasn't born a general. He was a slave who became a legend. This is the story of the victories Rome tried to erase. It all started in Capua, not with a declaration of war, but with a desperate breakout. Spartacus and about 78 other gladiators fought their way out of their training school, armed with little more than kitchen knives and stolen tools. They were slaves, considered property, disposable entertainment for the Roman crowds. But that day, they became rebels. The first Roman force sent to recapture them expected an easy victory. They found a maelstrom of fury instead. The professional soldiers were routed by men who had nothing to lose, and word began to spread like wildfire. Through the slave quarters, across the vast farmlands, whispered in the barracks of disgruntled soldiers. Runaway slaves, impoverished shepherds, army deserters, the outcasts of the Roman world, started flocking to his banner. They saw in Spartacus not just a leader, but a chance for freedom, a chance for revenge. The Roman Senate, deeply humiliated by these early defeats, finally decided to take this slave revolt seriously. They dispatched not one, but 2 consular legions, the backbone of Roman military might, under the command of Gaius Claudius Glaber and Publius Varinius. This was supposed to be the final act, a swift and brutal crackdown to restore order and make an example of the rebels. Rome was confident. How could an undisciplined mob of slaves possibly stand against the most professional army in the world? But Rome made a critical miscalculation. They forgot who Spartacus was before he was a gladiator. He had served in the Roman army as an auxiliary. He knew their formations, their tactics, their mindset. He knew how a Roman commander thought, how they planned, and where their arrogance made them vulnerable. And he was about to use that intimate knowledge to turn their greatest strength into their biggest weakness. The first major confrontation happened at the foot of Mount Vesuvius. The Roman commander, Glaber, managed to trap Spartacus and his entire army on the volcano's peak. He blocked the only known path down, sat back, and prepared to starve them into surrender. Back in Rome, senators probably toasted to a victory already won. The rebellion was cornered, finished. But Spartacus was a brilliant tactician, a master of improvisation. He looked at the sheer vine-covered cliffs on the other side of the mountain, a side the Romans considered impassable, and saw an opportunity. Under the cover of darkness, his men wove long, sturdy ladders from the wild vines. One by one, they rappelled down the treacherous rock face, a silent, ghostly army descending where no army should. They completely bypassed the Roman blockade and circled around Glaber's entire camp. As dawn broke, the Romans awoke not to the cheers of victory, but to the sounds of chaos. Spartacus's army slammed into their rear. The attack was so sudden, so unexpected, that the Roman lines shattered almost instantly. Legionaries, trained for orderly face-to-face combat, fled in sheer panic. Glaber's legions were slaughtered, their camp overrun, their standards, the sacred eagles of Rome, captured by escaped slaves. Days later, the second Roman commander, Varinius, met a similar fate. Cocky and overconfident, he split his forces, trying to outmaneuver Spartacus. Spartacus, in turn, picked off his lieutenants one by one before crushing Varinius's main force in a decisive battle. The result was an unprecedented disaster for Rome. 2 consular armies, 2 Roman legions, utterly destroyed in a single campaign. And they hadn't been defeated by another kingdom or a barbarian horde. They had been defeated by the very people they had chained and broken. The message was terrifyingly clear. The oppressed had risen, and they were winning. Back in Rome, the news was met with disbelief, then panic. The Senate was horrified. If slaves armed with stolen weapons and sheer will could annihilate 2 of their legions, What was to stop them from marching on Rome itself? The rebellion was no longer a localized problem. It was an existential threat. It spread from the fertile fields of Campania to the rugged mountains of Lucania. The social order of the entire republic felt like it was on the verge of collapse. For the first time in a long time, the world's mightiest empire faced an enemy born not on a foreign shore, but from within its own chains. And Spartacus, the man once whipped for sport in the arena, was now the one dictating Rome's next move. Faced with this unprecedented crisis, the Senate turned to one of its own, a man whose ambition was matched only by his incredible wealth. Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus wasn't just another general, he was the richest man in Rome. He saw the Spartacus rebellion not just as a threat, but as an opportunity for glory, a chance to achieve the military fame that had always eluded him. He was given extraordinary powers and a massive army of 8 legions, and he promised the Senate he would do what 2 others had failed to do: crush this rebellion, once and for all. Rome was done underestimating its slaves. It was now bringing its full, terrifying weight to bear. But as his victories mounted, Spartacus faced a new enemy, one far more dangerous than any Roman legion, a conflict within his own ranks. He had achieved the impossible, but he began to question what victory really meant. His goal had always been simple: freedom. He wanted to lead his people north over the Alps and out of Italy forever. He wanted them to escape, to disperse, and to find new lives far from their former masters. He didn't want to build a new kingdom or wage an endless war. He just wanted to go home. However, many of his followers disagreed. For men who had known nothing but brutality and servitude, the war wasn't just about freedom anymore. It was about retribution. They wanted to march on Rome, to burn the city that had enslaved them, to make the masters feel the pain they had inflicted. They tasted victory and wanted more. They wanted revenge, not peace. This fundamental division between the desire for freedom and the thirst for vengeance began to tear the rebel army apart from the inside. Spartacus, the brilliant leader who could outwit Roman generals, now struggled to command his own people, and that internal division would soon prove to be their undoing. In the end, Crassus and his legions cornered Spartacus. The final battle was brutal, and the rebellion was extinguished in blood. Rome had won, and once the fighting was over, they immediately began to wage a different kind of war, a war on memory. Roman historians, writing for their wealthy patrons, systematically rewrote the narrative. Spartacus was painted not as a brilliant general or a freedom fighter, but as a savage criminal, a brutal monster, a threat to civilization and order. His incredible victories against Glaber and Verinius were downplayed, twisted, or erased from official records. They buried his tactical genius beneath layers of propaganda, ensuring that future generations would remember him only as a failed, violent outlaw. But the truth has a way of enduring. Despite Rome's best efforts, the story survived. Spartacus, a Thracian slave, defeated 2 Roman consular armies with a force of fellow runaways. He made the most powerful Senate in the world tremble in fear. He proved that even an empire built on conquest and oppression could be shaken to its very core by the unbreakable will of those it tried to crush. His name became a symbol, a whisper of defiance passed down through the centuries. In the end, Spartacus fell in battle, but his spirit, his idea, never did. His story became a legend that echoed through history. Every uprising against tyranny, every revolution for equality, every time someone stood up and cried out for freedom, they stood in his shadow. Rome may have crucified his followers along the Appian Way and erased his victories from their monuments, but they could never truly erase his defiance. Because Spartacus taught the world a timeless lesson. The greatest rebellion is not fought with swords and shields, but with the simple, powerful refusal to kneel. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as powerful as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. We'll see you in the next one.